like, I feel like in life, I try to be like so respectful to people. And so like everyone is on their own journey. But when I'm running, I'm like, everybody wants me. They all suck. I'm amazing. Like it just feels very like alter ego character that is just wildly into themselves and richer than I am, and just like a real power slut. Like I feel like that is absolutely.
I love the term power slut. I don't think I've ever. I think that's a move you do at the gym. It's related to the deadlift.
Yeah, she went to
Have you heard the
regionals.
song in power sledding? Yeah, I had a couple girls in my high school who did. Have you heard the song One Margarita? One margarita, I'm open to beer.
Oh, yeah.
2 margarita, I'm a because it's all of those things that you just talked about smashed into one song. And
You're right.
just absolutely love it.
I feel like any really good sloppy party music where you're like, this is about getting blackout drunk and making horrible decisions is also great to work out to.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tyburczy.
What's up, everybody? Rudy here, and I just wanted to take a moment before we get to our conversation with Laura Sanders to mention that there were some technical difficulties and there was a bit of a lag in our conversation. So when I listened to the episode, it sounded like I was like butting in and cutting her off throughout the conversation, and I promise that's not what I was attempting to do. There was just a lag, and we did our best, and it was still so much fun to talk with her. I'm so glad that she wanted to sit down and chat with me, and she's so funny. She's been through a lot, and I feel really privileged that she felt comfortable sharing her story with us. So I'm excited that you get to hear our conversation. I want to take a minute to shout out our non-existent sponsors who do not exist. They don't exist, and they're not existent. So thank you to the non-existent sponsors out there in the world. Also, just want to take a second to make you aware of our online presence. You can find us on Instagram at jokesandthegym. And if you have any email questions, you can send us an email. I say us, but it's just me and my hands and body. And you can email at jokesandthegym@gmail.com if you have any questions about the show or working out or are considering looking for a personal training coach or a fitness trainer, something like that. I'm happy to answer questions you might have. So without any further ado, let's get to my conversation with the wonderful, Laura Sanders. Okay, how am I dubbed right now? Does it look good?
It looks good here. And actually the video seems better. I feel like this is just a better unit of internet that we're in.
Yeah,
wherever
we got
this
to
room is.
a better found a little more space to move around in that area of the internet.
I think I'm here in real time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's try another. Let's warm up with a little word association. How's that sound? I like to wiggle around, move stuff around, get it going. Yeah.
Yeah, very theater game. I love it.
Yeah, I started as an improviser, so I still have this improviser's spirit at heart where I'm like, let's just figure it out. And sometimes that's not always the best. Okay, let's see. Okay, word association, say as much or as little as you want. Let's, festivals.
Oh, fun. And also,
yeah, I would agree. That's how I feel.
The music, I feel like it's like big friendship vacations. And then also, there's a line in the musical Into the Woods that they're trying to get to a festival. And then they say the festival, the King's Festival. And that's also pops in my head because I'm a musical kid.
Yeah. Nice. Did you grow up doing theater stuff?
Yeah, I was not talented musically, but I did some acting, and then I was in stage crew for multiple years, and my mom was a musical director. So I grew up watching musicals a ton, all the high school ones and, all that I could.
It's just in your head.
Yeah.
I had a friend in theater who he did this created piece, like one song from his own creation that he never wrote fully, called My Life is a Musical. And it was just the most fun I'd ever had watching live theater. And where I was like, what play is that from? He's like, I just wrote that one scene. I was like, oh, you jerk.
Yeah, we were like, I want the whole thing.
Yeah. What happens to the guy whose life is a musical? What happens to that guy? Because I love that form of like weird high comedy where the lead is kind of in on it and nobody else is. What's that Rebel Wilson movie? Isn't it romantic? Have you seen that?
Yes. I love that. Yeah. I love a like satire of something that you can tell they love the genre they are making a satire of so much.
Mm-hmm. Because that's what it should be like. It's like, yes, this is what it's like, and this is how it's silly, and let's play with it. It's a blast.
Yeah, where you're like, you cannot write a movie like that without having seen every single romantic comedy there's ever been.
Totally. I totally love it. Yeah, I'm about it. Okay, word association, stretching.
Should do.
Should
like
do. Do?
Sometimes, but like it's one of those things. I feel like stretching feels like drinking water, where when I'm doing it a lot, I feel great. And when I need to do it, I'm like, why do I feel like shit? and I like do it. I like chugging your water as I answer. But yeah. I think stretching is like flossing, that sort of thing, where it's like a maintenance that I always feel better when I'm doing, but never at any given time. I don't have a habit of it.
You don't have you've stretched before. You recognize the act of stretching.
Yes. And I think I'm acting like it's this giant thing you have to do. Like I do yoga sometimes, I stretch sometimes, but I picture like the most actualized version of myself being someone that like wakes up and does like a 10-minute stretch, like that's doing it just all the time. Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful thought. It's such a wonderful. I see like these influencers do like, here's how I stretch in my bed for 10 minutes every day. And I'm like, yeah, shut up. My bed's covered in cats.
Yeah, I feel like if I'm thinking about it, I'm like, it's not gonna, I don't know. I feel like I was raised Catholic, so I feel like many of these answers will have a guilt wrapped around them. You're like, this word, and I'm like, feel bad I don't do it more.
Oof, yeah, should do. Yeah, there was immediate judgment in your response. Yeah. Should do. Whenever what I started doing is appreciating the value of like little stretches throughout the day. Like if I feel a little tightness somewhere, it's like I might stretch a little bit. Or the thing that I just am a wiggler. I like jiggle stuff around. I'll like move my shoulders or like wiggle my hips. I'm like, oh, I'll just be like in a public place and say, oh, my hips around strangers. And they're like, what?
You're like, I've reached that age where I just say, oh, my hips in public.
Yeah.
But
it's true. I'm 40.
I have to legally say it out loud soon.
Yeah, it's in the contract. It's on my license plate. There's a few options or on the driver's licenses. You can say, oh, darn, or I'm too cold, or oh, my hips. I went with hips. Yeah.
I think I'm an oh, darn. I'm an oh, darn.
You're an oh, darn. Nice. Okay. Your comedy scene.
Is New Orleans, is where I live.
New Orleans.
Which,
okay.
Yeah.
How's I hear great things.
There's many very funny people here. The scene is very like ragtag, I would say. Like, and ragtag sounds like very self-produced. There's no club here, which is a wild thing. Like people are always like, there's like independent, like smaller theaters, but there's no like corporate club that everyone's like, oh, you learn to feature here, you learn to go here. Like, and so I feel like, well, that's like, as a career choice, if you're like a very young, I want to climb the ladder, ambitious comedian, I would say like, don't move to New Orleans. But if you're like, I really want to love where I live and feel creatively inspired and have easy access to work with talented people, then it's a great city to live in.
That sounds like a great city. Yeah. There's so many people who just like are in a hurry to climb. And so when they're in this place like New Orleans, Eugene is the same way. There's no club here at the moment, although there's apparently one on the way, which I'm excited and nervous about because I feel like a club can really change a comedy scene's ecosystem. Have you ever like been?
Yes.
Have you been in New Orleans for a long time?
I've been in New Orleans for like 8 years, but I started comedy in Columbus, Ohio. So for me, like starting comedy, I remember the Funny Bone in Columbus being like the holy grail of achievement to me for a long time, where I was like, I just need to get work at the Funny Bone. And now being like removed from that, I'm like, oh, it's so funny that like that was all of what everything meant to you, was like this club was such a like center of your universe. And now I'm like, oh God, I wouldn't like I feel like there's many things as you get further in comedy, you're like, oh, that was made of fog. Like that wasn't a real thing that was like an end all be all achievement. Yeah. And so
isn't that kind of every one of them?
Yeah. All of like in life, every single achievement in anything is you're like, once you get up close to it, you're like, oh, nobody knows what they're doing here either. I was like, including me, like I was waiting to get to this thing so then I'd really know what I was doing. And it's like, no, you just got to realize like everyone is just as confused as you are, no matter what level. If you achieve a thing that you were really looking forward to, like often you are like, that didn't even feel good. Like the things that you put in your head is like, and then I will be legitimate as a person and a performer. Once you get there, you're like, oh, it still feels the same or bad.
Yeah, I'm here now. Okay, hi everyone. What are we doing next? Because that's really a real thing, is that desire for just continued growth for a lot of people. I think like once you hit those milestones, you're like, oh, well, now I have to keep going and I want to do the next thing. It was that last thing was doable and now I'm here and I don't feel all the juiciness that I wanted to. Or sometimes you do. Sometimes it feels really good. Have you ever had one of those that you hit, that you met, and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool?
Oh, like, yeah, that felt good. I feel like this is forever ago now. I recorded an album that I had a nice time. And I think though, every time I look back at a milestone and I'm like, that felt good, it's never like the comedy achievement as much as the people involved. Like sometimes I think I got involved in comedy just to hang out with the people that are involved in comedy. And so like, even with my album recording, I like did it with a buddy. Like he recorded an album too. It was like our farewell to Columbus. It was that sort of thing. And then even like recently, one of my most feel good shows was with that same buddy last year when he recorded his second album and like I opened for him. And so like, most of my achievements, I feel like in comedy are like friendship level ups.
I love that. I mean, shouldn't that be not? I don't know if should stay. I try to stay away from. I should stay away from saying should.
Yeah, you should. You really should.
But I should do. But isn't that what it's about for most comedians? Is kind of like, I mean, maybe 5% of the comedians I know are doing it full time. So why not just like enjoy the ride that you're on with the people you're in it with? Like what a blessing that we do get to practice comedy at least.
Yeah, I feel like that's also without that, how exhausting. Like what a miserable time if you're like, I really don't like, because I've met some comics like that. I feel like I've featured for some guys that are kind of the like sparkle is gone and they don't really like it anymore and they're not getting the same buzzy feelings. And I'm like, how could you keep doing it then? Because when you're not feeling it, it sucks. It's awful. So
yeah. It can be I've had a challenging year with a lot of challenges. So it's like sometimes comedy can take a back seat. Sometimes I needed to put it a little lower on the priority list. And other times I'm like, okay, I want to I should be. I want to do more comedy. I want to go out more. I want to have that. And sometimes I'll just go out to hang out, you know. Sometimes it's just literally about the hang because there's 2 audience members there and the only spot available on the list is 19th. And I'm like, oh, I can go home sometimes.
Yeah, that you're like, I can get the same out of this from just talking to people that I respect and enjoy than like going up and just saying the thing in front of the people. Like one of the saddest shows I've ever had in comedy was I was touring and it was like an open mic that I got a book spot on. It was one of those like weird fill in a tour gap shows. And it was the guy who was hosting it was arguing, he was hosting a comedy open mic, arguing with a poetry open mic over who got the stage because they were double booked, all while a baseball game is going on. So no one wants either of them on stage. And I just remember being like, the show doesn't have to go on. Like, because he, I think, was really fighting for like my honor as the traveling comic. And I was like, oh, I truly I don't want to go up. Like, I don't want this. Nobody's happy with me talking into a microphone here. And I'm not offended by that. I think that's like appropriate.
Yeah.
They're watching a baseball game.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So many double bookings. I've had so many shows changed last minute that I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was headlining this show. But here we are. Just things are just constantly up in the air. And I was talking with my friend yesterday. Comedy, stand-up especially, is one of those things that you have to be very adept at, like being flexible. You have to be able to move around and go with the punches because there's so many unexpected things in every friggin' show. Before we kind of move on to maybe like the working out exercise part of this, where are you currently in your like comedy journey? What are you focusing on, or how are you feeling about it all?
I feel like right now I'm just kind of like riding out the end of the year a little bit. Like I have a fun show tonight that's like holiday-y, and I feel like for these few months I'm trying to I feel like my goal is like to hold it lightly, to like get just joy out of it for a while, because I do think like there's a lot of shoulds. And I also had a year full of like much personal tragedy, like a kind of Job amount of personal tragedy in my life this year. And so I just like wasn't for a while. And then I was joking. I did like a recording. My mom and my brother died this year. I'm just going to say that because it is
oh wow.
Yeah. It's weird to talk around
That's
it and be
lot.
like much personal tragedy, but they about
So
6 months
much.
apart. So much.
Wow.
And then
So much. The most. I'm so sorry for your loss, Laura.
And then after a month after my mom died, I had to get my front tooth yanked out of my face for like just old injury reasons. And so like I feel like in the summer I was like desperately clinging to comedy as like oh my God, so I recorded a half hour where I like popped my fake tooth out and did all this weird grief shit. And I haven't even looked at the video yet because I'm like, God, that's gotta be so grotesque. Like the whole thing has to be so weird. And I feel like I was like documenting it through comedy as like an extreme coping mechanism. And then I like didn't do it for a little bit. And so now I'm back in the like, hey, it was nice to make those really intense jokes about grief that were very sad. But what if you just got to be silly for a little bit? Like, what if you just got to have this be like a silly time and it doesn't have to be this like meaningful and it ends up, if you lean into the silly, it ends up being a delightful and profound thing anyway. But I feel like now I'm trying to just be like, what if you just had a little fun for a little bit with comedy instead of having it mean life and death like it was earlier this year?
Right. I think that's such an important point because so many people do bring their heaviness with them on stage and it permeates the room. That's what a comedian does, is their vibe permeates the room. And so just to have fun is such an important reminder. I have by no means experienced the same kind of personal tragedy as you have this year. It's been a challenging year for me and I've been in low spots and I've had to remind myself to like have fun. I will literally, what I'll do on some of my set lists is write the word that I want to imbue the entire set with. I'll like write
that.
fun all over the page, or joy, or curiosity, or whatever it is, just so it's like on that page. And even if I look down and my visual cue is fun, guess what? We're going to have more fun after that.
Yeah. I definitely feel like it's like funny how you have to remind yourself sometimes where you're like, hey baby, it's okay. This is just for ha-has. Like, because it's such a bizarre feeling when you're feeling low and like dragging yourself up on stage and you're like, who is this for then? Like if you're miserable up here and they're not having a nice time, what are we doing? Mm-hmm. Like go into bed if this isn't going to be the thing that feels good.
Maybe tonight isn't the night to test your boundaries, to see, yes. to go push your limits. That's a good reminder sometimes too, because sometimes I've gotten on stage and been like, ooh, we're all in a worse place now. It's like, I wasn't ready to handle that on stage.
Oh yeah, the too soon. I've definitely had jokes before where I'm like, ooh, I told that before I had emotionally processed it. My therapist talks about it as a, like, mm-hmm. There's a Buddhist principle, I think, that like raw emotions are like uncooked potatoes, and that it's like you shouldn't be presenting your uncooked potatoes to anyone. Like you have to cook those before you serve.
That is a perfect analogy. I've found time and time again, an audience does not want to see me going through the actual feeling of a sad joke. You can make a sad joke funny, but when you're experiencing the low and trying to figure out how to like it's so much harder to get them on your side, because instead of joy they're feeling pity, and that's not what you want from an audience.
Not at all. And like they're either feeling pity just at you, or you've brought up something horrible in their heart and mind that they came to escape, and like you've done the worst. The definition I love of comedy is benign violation. I feel like that's like a really nice phrase for it. And it's not benign if you don't know how to handle the darkest material. It's just a violation.
Oh my. When you see those new comedians handling or trying to whip out dark jokes like in month 3, you're like, I leave the room. I have to leave the room. It's just too much for me. It's a lot. Yeah.
I think I finally, especially, I don't host an open mic anymore. And so I feel this more freely now. I finally got to a point where I was like, oh, you don't have to listen to everyone. Like, I think like it took me far too long to get to that. Like when I first started comedy, I remember some of the more established comedians, I would be like, I can't believe they're not listening to these sets, or like, I can't believe they're not supporting the show. And it's like, do you know how much horrible just like human waste has gone into their ears from getting to this point where they are? Like, do you know
so
just
much,
like raw,
so much.
Yes.
They just have those potatoes shoved in there, just getting raw potatoes in their ears all the. It's not fair to anyone. It's and you just have to get to a place where you're okay with it, because you feel guilty about it. It's like, I want to support everybody, and you do want that, and it's fun to be able to do that. But it's like, I just did a set, or I'm getting ready for my set. I'm not here to listen to everybody. Yeah, I'll check out a set or two and kind of catch the vibes and see what's going on and make some jokes about it and all that. But it's okay to leave early. It's okay to go up early and leave early. It's okay to go up when you go up and be outside the rest of the time. Like, there's no rule book, you know? It just takes a while to get there.
Yeah. And like the people pleaser, I feel like a thing that an epiphany I've had very recently is like, oh, I'm a people pleaser, but I count as people. Like, I'm allowed to consider myself as a person that needs to be pleased in a situation.
Yeah, you need to please this people. We need to please our people.
Yeah.
So, for you recently, I like to ask the question, like, what has your gym been lately? So it's called Jokes in the Gym. The gym is used loosely. I didn't use sets and reps. I love the title sets and reps, but it's already been used a few times, so I went with jokes in the gym because I'm too straightforward and I lack any subtlety at all.
But
so
sets and reps,
for you, Loris.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. I think again we're a little audio laggy, but we're good. We're trying our best. For me, I feel like my like body gym lately is my neighborhood. I have lived by a beautiful park, and I've started like I do interval running, which is just, you get to walk every 3 minutes. You like scoot along real slow and then you walk and you just repeat that forever. And I did a half marathon with that earlier this year. And then I like didn't run for a while.
Congrats.
Oh, thank you. And now I'm like just getting back into running again. So I feel like I'm like using my neighborhood as a gym because in New Orleans it's chilly but not impossible out, and I find that's also really good for my brain because when I go outside and I'm just like, look at some flowers, like it's just like, because I started doing the half marathon training again because like I say like, is anyone else holding on by one single endorphin? Like it's very important for my brain to like do that. and so I feel like the park near my neighborhood, all of that. And then like, this is a nerdy answer also, but I keep a bullet journal where I like write down lots of things to myself and chart out things and write down a to-do list instead of a to-do list.
Can you explain that a little more? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So bullet journal is, I do it like kind of loosely, but it's like a whole journaling system for like tasks, and I'm trying to not sound incredibly boring when I describe this, but it's just like a task listing system and an achievement system and like that sort of thing. And I, at a young age, became very obsessed with planners and like writing notes to myself and that sort of thing. I'm very externally motivated. So I need to like create the motivation externally for myself. And my favorite thing, my good friend Lelia taught me to do this habit, which is very cute. That is, you do a to-do list instead of a to-do list. So instead of being like, oh, I have all this to do, you write down all the things you already did. Where you're like for this day, because I feel like sometimes days go sideways and you're like, God, I like didn't get anything done. But then when you actually look back at the day, you're like, oh, I had a really full day. It's just not the day I expected. And so I feel like shit at the end of it for not having done all the things on this arbitrary list I made. And instead you get to be like, oh, I like connected with a friend. I did something for my health. I did this, instead of like, oh, I didn't send off those 10 emails I promised. And then it's like you get to actually feel okay about it.
We're not taught how to appreciate ourselves, to celebrate our small victories, to not be jerks to ourselves, I think. Like just in general. Maybe that's changing, maybe parenting is changing, but I just don't think people are equipped to deal with when they need help or when they're not having a good day. I just started this book, by Dr. Julie Smith. Why didn't someone tell me this sooner, or something like that? And it's like a #1 best-selling book. I really recommend it. And it's just like little day-to-day things that you can do to like help your mood. Because one thing that she touched on that really just hit with me is how 1 or 2 bad days of low mood can like spiral into a full-on depression, like without even you knowing it. And it's like crazy how that can happen, and you can see yourself get into those things. Do you have, and I know this has been the roughest year imaginable, how have you been
take your podcast?
No, please, taint. No, I appreciate you sharing your stories. And I mean, that's what it's about, is allowing people to do that. I think that's what conversation is about. But kind of going back to the practical applications of it, what are some of the tools that you have used? Could be to cope with with grief this year, with loss, or just a bad day. Like what are some of the practical things that you have been trying to include for yourself?
I feel like practical things. One, like therapy, I feel like is the thing that I started doing therapy last year. for the first time as an adult. And I'd always been someone who was like, everyone should get therapy. It's wonderful for everyone. But then I had like a little hiccup for myself, even though I was like pro it for everyone I know. I was still like, oh, I don't know that I need, like, I'm good. And then, so I feel like that is something that I'm like, oh my God, just to have a person to process your potatoes with. And like, actually, that's okay. You're not like trauma dumping on a friend or something like that has been awesome. I use a lot of, I feel like I have a deep personal relationship with Afosu on my balanced meditation app. He is the man who he like does all the meditations for just like their quick hit meditations for moods.
I love it.
I don't have like a great meditation practice, but when you're like, you can literally go in and be like, I'm feeling sad. Give me a meditation for like feeling sad right now. And then he just is like, hey girl, let's go through this nice memory. He doesn't say, hey girl, but it feels like he does the way he talks. And then like also just like reaching out as far as like, I have a friend who does a beautiful thing for me that started this hard year called the complaints department, where if I'm just feeling like overwhelmed, I'll just get to text like, is the complaints department open? And then she'll go, hello, this is Lelia with the complaints department. And then I can just like, and so then I know that like she has the bandwidth for me to just like dump a bunch of shit via text message. Yep. And then she can just say like complaint received. Oh, that's so hard. Like, I don't even need specific, I need to like file my grievances with a friend. And sometimes that helps me just be like, okay, they're off me.
They're out there. Sometimes you just have to externalize stuff. Everything I read, everything I see just says the importance of journaling is huge. And I just haven't been a good journaler lately. I did my morning pages for a while. Do you know the morning pages in the artist? 3 handwritten pages.
I've made it to week 8.
How's your notebooks? Yeah.
No. I feel like I'm a like once a week morning pages person. I'll go through spurts where I bet over the course of a year, I average about once or twice a week. And it's so useful when I actually do it. And I've been doing it more this year because of, buckets of grief. But I feel like that is like when I'm actually doing it, it's buckets, just massive buckets of it. But I feel like this year it's like once a week. I never will think, to be honest with myself, will never make it through the artist's way. I know that I'll never make it past the weeks that I've already made it past. But I was talking to a friend and I'm like, I don't know, morning pages and once a week artist dates just seem like good. I got that from that. That's useful. I'll do those.
If you get just those 2 things from the artist's way, that's great. That's more than enough, right? That's a huge use. Those are great tools. Have you gone on any artist dates lately?
Ooh, I feel last night I went to, this isn't, technically it wasn't solo, so it wasn't an artist date, but a bar in town has a drink and draw where you like a model poses for figure drawing and at this bar and you just like pay $10 and you go in and you get to like figure draw for 2 hours. And it's like really chill. And I do so much of my artwork on computers that it was like really fun to just kind of be like a little rusty and bad at hand drawing something. And it was really super relaxing. So that was like, and I love an activity at a bar. I love like a chill, we're not just all hanging out on a corner. I love like a fun little like relaxing time
thing
that's
to do.
Yeah, that's not just like come drink booze here. It's like, hey, and they serve, okay, this is a tangent, but I feel like we're on a health, so we can talk about drinking. They serve athletic beers. I'm drinking one right. Do you know Athletic, the brewing company that does non-alcoholic beers?
Love Athletic.
Oh my gosh. I'm drinking one right now because I was like, I want to have a beer with this podcast that feels good, but I'm not really boozing right now.
Perfect.
And so I was like, oh my God, I've been chugging them lately. And more New Orleans bars are starting to have them available. And it is made as a comedian who spends many nights in bars. It makes such a difference to have that option.
It's huge. I've been really, this year I've gone to drinking like someone who you're like, oh, so you don't drink? I'm like, no, I drink 1 drink a week.
Yeah.
And they're like, shut up. That's not real.
Yeah, which that concept seemed impossible to me years ago, or like when I first started comedy, and they're like, really, just do like one drink a week. And I was like, what are you? That's insane. Like one drink a night seems challenging for the amount that you're around drinking.
Yep.
But then once you start doing it, you're kind of like, oh, it really doesn't make that much of a difference, except that I don't feel terrible all the time.
Absolutely. That's the thing about not drinking. It's like it gives you time. That's the beautiful thing about drinking less, is it gives you days. It gives, especially if you're struggling with low mood or depression or things like that.
Yeah.
It's like drinking can just rip away weeks or months of your time. And I know I might come across as this some like anti-drinking whatever, but I still love drinking. I love to have a drink, but it's just like how many nights have you gone out and had 3 to 5 drinks and not felt great that night or the next day or whatever? And then you're $30 in the hole too, because it's like, oh yeah, that's why I'm broke.
Yeah, I spent $50 on a Tuesday on not good things, like on things I didn't even enjoy a ton. Like same, I feel like it was like a sign for me that I needed to stop hosting the open mic I hosted when it's at a bar that they make amazing cocktails, 12 Mile Limit in New Orleans. If any specifically New Orleans people are listening to this, I hosted an open mic there for 5 years, but it was an open bar every Monday night. And I was getting tired of being hungover on Tuesdays. And then I kind of analyzed it and I'm like, oh, you're tired of hosting an open mic. So you're drinking there every time to make it more fun, when like no one is making you do this thing that you have to drink to have more fun at.
Yeah. And then it takes your Tuesday away.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. I could make a change. Sometimes you look at your life and the choices you're making and it's clear and it's easy. And you're like, oh, I can do this thing a little bit differently and I will feel the results from it pretty quickly. I feel like some of the stuff like not drinking or moving your body around a little more, those kinds of things have pretty immediate physical and mental health benefits, I would say. But we don't do them for whatever reason. I think it's just habit. You know, you're just, how long have you done comedy? How long have you been a stand-up?
I think I started in 2000. The first that I ever did, I think, was in like 2006. And then like a year after that, I started kind of more regularly. So I've been like doing it chill mode for a very long time. It's how I've built my career. Right. Yes.
That's kind of how it is in DIY scenes. I feel like there's a pretty hard cap of feature. It's like, oh, that's where you can get. It's just so hard to do much more. I recorded a special kind of thing, and it's like, it felt good to do it, but has it done anything for me? No, but I did it, and it felt great. It was my 13th comedy anniversary. So many people came. My friends from all over the world. I've lived in Korea. Kyle Kinane was there. A bunch of friends were there just to come and hang out and support. And I did it. I'd been promoting it for more than a year. It was like, okay, this is a thing that I'm doing, that I've put out there in the world, and I created those external motivators, like, okay, a year from today I'm going to record this, or I made a preview or whatever, just so I could keep myself moving on that track.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, it felt good. What did it achieve? And you're like, oh, feeling really good and getting to share a thing I care about with many people that I care about. Where I feel like before we were like, I feel like comedy used to feel for me where I was like, how many Comedy Central points do I get for doing this? Like I feel like everything I was like checking the scoreboard to be like, did that count for anything? Did that whatever? And it's like, nothing counts for anything. Nothing matters or makes sense. The times that you get to do the biggest achievements of your career are from a completely random series of events. And like, all you can do is like, so my friend Cam O'Connor, I don't know if he's a lovely man, great comic. And the first night I met him,
awesome.
He's got like a real like low kind of radio guy voice. And he's like, got to keep being funny, keep being nice. And those are like and I like always think of that when I'm like, what have I achieved even? You're like, oh, yeah, plenty.
Yeah, I've done a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, if you're not having fun, being funny, and being a decent hang, then what's the point of it? Like, go have a couple athletics, chill with your buds, crack some jokes, fail a couple times. Like, it's actually really healthy when you think about it. It's people doing the scariest thing in the world by the statistics, you know, and finding community in it. Like, what a beautiful shared experience. And mine started overseas, so it was like even more so like this connective activity, because there wasn't as much clawing to get up to the top or whatever. But I think like anybody who does comedy and is able to call themselves a comedian, like, should take a second every month to pat themselves on the back, because you're doing that, and you could not. You could just as easily not. A lot more easily not.
Yeah. Although now I'm thinking of some people where I want to be like, you could not.
Maybe you should.
Should not. That's the old cynic part of me.
When do you find that? Yeah, not the person that's listening. I thought you were telling me. Thanks, Laura. Thank you. You don't think I should quit. I appreciate that. Yeah, I aim to be sufficient. That's all. That's my, because I want to. What I try to do, what I've noticed, and I'd like to do it more, is that my best sets come on days when I've had a good vibe that day. Like when I've met with a friend, when I've had a nice amount of exercise, but not too much exercise. It's like, oh yeah, there are these things we can do to prepare ourselves for comedy, in addition to the joke writing and set list making and all that kind of stuff. But there's other stuff we can do for ourselves to make comedy better. Do you find that you have a certain place you like to be at mentally, physically, whatever, to get on stage, or do you put yourself in any place before you get on stage?
I feel like the best that isn't achievable all the time, because you can't always be touring, but I feel like the sweet spot of like elevated is when I'm performing in a city I don't live with like a good friend, because you get like the adventure feeling with all, like, you have a buddy in it, so you don't have the isolation of when you're doing it alone. You've been performing like over and over again, so you have like the rhythm and kind of the muscle memory of the shows that have built up over the tour. And then I don't know, I just feel like my partner always, whenever I come home from a tour, he's like, you're always like a large percentage funnier when you've like had that time. So I feel like ideal all the time is like end of a tour with a very good friend, which isn't always achievable. So I feel like day to day, just like the best I feel like that I can kind of like whip myself into a good frenzy is I'm like, isn't it so fun that you get to do this thing? Like, isn't it miraculous that all of these collections of cells are coming to connect with your brain, saying things into a microphone? I feel like I get very like existential about it, and very like sounds like I'm high when I'm trying to like describe, where I'm like, it's amazing that like these human beings are gathering with you, that you get to like try to make them laugh, and that they usually will. And that it's like so I feel like that's when I can zoom out a little bit and be like, this is magic, is when my head is good. And then when my head is bad, I'm like, this is a horrible chore and everyone hates it.
Well, isn't that connected to gratitude? Isn't that all just a gratitude, essentially, when we're able to say, oh, yeah, I'm so stoked that I can do this? What is the book? I love reading books on stand-up comedy. I love doing weird little exercises and stuff. Again, just so it's like I'm not having to do it all myself. I just get something to bounce off of. You need the reps. You need the practice. You need to go through it. And there's this one book, I think, Mastering Stand-Up Comedy. And it's a pretty small book, guy from New York who runs like American Comedy Institute or something like that. But along those lines, same kind of thing. He's like, rather than going up with the mindset like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so funny and all these jokes are going to be hilarious and everyone's going to have the best time, it's like, just tell yourself, I am happy that I get to do comedy, that I am here with these people, that there are people around that are going to listen. And like, I find when I have that mindset of just like realistic expectations of a comedy set, which is something comedians don't always know how to keep in check, it's like medicine. It's like, oh yeah, I can just have fun up here. It doesn't matter that it's new material or it's a little open mic or it's in this weird bar in Ohio that nobody's at right now. It's like there's 5 of us and the bartenders, and we'll have fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's so nice. So just keeping those things in mind are super big, and I'm really glad that other people do that, because so often you don't see people giving gratitude. So I literally thank the audience almost every time for just, because think about this. Let's say you have a good crowd. There's 40 people in there. You're doing 5 minutes. What's 40 times 5? 200.
Oh, yeah.
That's 200 man minutes, human minutes right there that you just got to impact in 5 minutes. How huge is that, right?
Yeah.
That's like a day's work.
It truly, and I feel like because I'm around comedy so much, I'm like, God, who would come out to comedy? Like, what magical person would come listen to this? Because it's so, in supply and demand, it's so abundant in my life. I have so much of it that I'm like, who would come out? But then every once in a while, I'll like go to a show as an audience member that's just so fun and so good. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is like a magical connection. And it's like, I can't believe I get to be on the other end of this for people sometimes. Like I get to be on the performer end of it. Cause like, yeah, the other night, Ryan Singer and Jeff Tate came through town, who I like love both of their comedy. Nice. And I got to like watch their show as just a, audience member watches a comedy show. And I was like, this is a blast. Like it was really nice.
It's like, oh yeah, stand-up comedy is fun. Like that's why I love a headliner or a co-headliner show or a really great book show. Same, I went to see Billy Wayne Davis here in town just to hang out and watch. It was at this Dabs show. It was pretty crazy. It was fun. But he was hilarious, and it's just like, oh yeah, it's just go with a bunch of people high on dabs, watch some comedy. It's such a treat when you don't have to like worry about going up or anything like that. It's like you can just be your like holiday party self. You know what I like? Yeah. I wish I had the capability to do that a little more freely. So I feel like part of why I even want to do this is like, how can we all get there? How can you be that version of yourself that is like lighten up a room, lighten up that holiday party? And it's like you talked about with your friends. Tell me, do you have any ways to find your voice? What do you try to do to create an authentic piece or joke or whatever? Is there anything that you tend to do or try to do?
I feel like I don't spend a lot of energy specifically being like, how do I put my voice into this? But I feel like the jokes that I like the most are just like, this sounds so simple, but like literally things that I think are funny. Like I feel like sometimes I try to like put too much intellectualism into a joke where I'm like, how do I craft this thing? And then often I'll just kind of chew on it in my brain, and either in a moment alone or a lot of times when I'm like walking my dog, I'll be like, oh, that like makes me laugh. And then I'll text my friend. Often it's my friend Travis Haywisher, great comedian in Columbus, who I'll text him and be like, this is hilarious, right? And then he's like, yeah. And so I feel like those are my favorite jokes, are like they pop into my head or they happen naturally in conversation. And then I feel like I'm just like picking apples out of a tree, not trying to like build a sculpture of an apple from scratch.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's the mix of the organic and the inorganic, right? There's an actively unnatural part of the writing process, but other times when you can like, like Harry Potter and the pensive, just like, oh, here's a little joke. It's so nice when they come out that way. It's a blessing. But you hit on something that I try to do as well, which is like, who do I laugh the most with? And would this joke hit in that wheelhouse? Are me and Jessica gonna laugh at this when when we chat next time or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's also like joyful feeling rather than chore feeling. Anytime I'm like, sit down and write because you have to write, it's like, ugh. But then if you're like, ooh, we joked about this topic, and that like makes me giggle to think about it, it's fantastic.
Totally. It's so nice. Yeah. I'll send text messages to myself throughout the week, and then at the end of the week, go through them and see what kind of stuff like I can work with that week. Because I'll just write down things that I think are funny or interesting or whatever. And I find that helps for me to like unload them, kind of like the journaling thing. Like you unload them, and then later you get to check them out again and see how it goes.
I have a very similar. I have a note on my phone. Oh, oops, sorry. I have a note on my phone called "Jokes for Folks." I just like write down little tidbits that I don't want to like forget, but I'm like, I'm not writing right now. So I like, collect a little file of them. I'm all about, I have 1 million Google Docs. I have 1 million notes on my phones. I'm like all about writing down. I have an envelope that I put worries in. Like I just truly like, I'm like, have a whole bureaucracy that is a like whimsical bureaucracy that is supporting my day-to-day life.
I love it. It sounds like Sesame Street for anxious comedians.
Yes. 100%.
It's like, oh, these are the jokes you only tell after 10 p.m. And then Oscar the Grouch is like, yeah.
Yes.
So moving forward, and this could be related to comedy or health or anything like that. What kinds of goals do you have for yourself? Maybe something like in the shorter term and something in the longer term. Is there stuff like that you're working towards? Small, big, medium, whatever?
I think that I noticed that like when I'm taking a lot of time to focus on mental health or processing big life things, I'll like move away from comedy. And then I feel like when I'm doing lots of comedy, I like won't be as responsible with my life things or like not like ignore work or procrastinate or things like that. So I feel like in the like holding things lightly, finding joy in things, I would love just like more of a all at once feeling like that where I'm not, and I feel like I'm like newer to not drinking this year. So I feel like that's going to be a big help in doing that, is basically like that you're not just making yourself hungover every time you do a comedy show. But I feel like just way more like having the two things fold into each other. That's kind of a constant goal of mine. Cause like as a visual artist and a comedian, I feel like I keep acting like they're fighting for each other's attention, where I feel like I should be more like they're blades that are sharpening each other. And that is, I kind of hope to like lean in a little bit more into that this year.
Finding the balance and the integration of the different parts of your life. Like, I think that's the ultimate goal, right? How do we blend it together in a way that feels authentic and joyful and generous? Like that's what it's about. And it's a life. I feel like it's a lifelong pursuit to how to find your balance.
Oh yeah, it would be wild to meet someone who's like, I did that 10 years ago, and since I've been like, it just seems like not something just you're like, just been nailing it ever since. Just about 10 years ago, I found my balance, and now I'm good. No more hardships for me, baby.
Yeah, it's easy street. I've met so many people like that. Yeah. Yeah, finding that balance is good. It's such a tricky procedure as well, because it's different for everybody and it's different on different days, right? Like I'm the king of getting knocked off balance. I'm like, oh, I was doing a pirouette over here, and then like a hardy wind came by and like took me out at the ankles. I'm like, oh well, the weekend's shot.
Yeah, I truly like this. And this is something like in all the like cheesy like lessons of grief sort of thing. But a thing I've really discovered is like when you talk about how a couple days can throw you off for like a whole spell as far as depression and things like that. It's been so interesting to me to like learn how to coax myself out of low moments, in the sense of as I learn to do that more and more. And like if I have a really sad strong feeling in the morning, that it doesn't mean I'm going to feel that way even for the rest of the afternoon, is like you get to learn to trust yourself that you know how to do that. So I feel like before, when I was just kind of thrown in the tailspin because I'm like used to being a good time gal. Like I'm just used to, I'm like generally a cheery disposition. It's just kind of, I'm an extrovert. All of those things kind of happily come very naturally to me. And so it's like interesting to learn when that doesn't happen so automatically, that it's like an even deeper, more like well-earned feeling of joyfulness when you're like, oh, I had to like trust myself to coax myself into this joyfulness. And so I feel more secure in it than when it just came easily because nothing bad was happening.
That's such an important point and lesson to learn in grief, is that it almost seems to increase your capacity for joy, hypothetically, from the standpoint of of like, hey, I have felt the other side of this, like, but it must be such a huge adjustment for you, like you said, having this naturally sunny disposition, and you have one of those annoying people that you were so annoying when I met you. I was like, oh my God, this lady, she's too happy. But I need that, because I take in what's around me, and so I was drawn to you because it's one of those experiences where it's like, oh my gosh, she has such a genuine and authentic joy about being here. I was like, she would be the perfect little zombie to hang out with, to get zombified by, and and it totally worked out that way. So hats off to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my whether we're on a podcast or not, you can it's not the complaint department, but you can file any kinds of things over here. I have a file system that's out of order, but I'll try my best.
Like, you can add my team to your bureaucracy of whimsy to just be like, we got the files, eventually we'll file them.
Yeah, I put the file with just like a pair of legs that are like flailing, and that will signify exercise. That's an exercise. Oh yeah, legs. I need to move my legs today. I forgot. On the idea of moving your legs, what I love hearing what kind of music people listen to when they're doing their thing. What are you listening to?
I love I feel like I vacillate between, I love a show tune, I love a like dramatic ballad, but I love some like good slutty hip hop. I feel like that's like my favorite thing to like swagger, sluttiness, just like bravado. I feel like that is like where it's always going to be for me. So like it feels like when I'm running, I have one of those secret, like Nicki Minaj. Today I was listening to a lot of Jay-Z. Like just a lot of like I feel like in life I try to be like so respectful to people, and so like everyone is on their own journey, but when I'm running, I'm like, everybody wants me, they all suck, I'm amazing. Like it just feels very like alter ego character that is incredibly like just wildly into themselves and richer than I am, and just like a real power slut. Like I feel like that is absolutely
I love the term power slut. I think that's a move you do at the gym. It's related to the deadlift.
She went to regionals. Have you heard the song
in power sledding? Yeah, I had a couple girls in my high school who did. Have you heard the song One Margarita? One margarita, I'm open to beer. Two margarita, I'm open, because it's all of those things that you just talked about smashed into one song, and I just absolutely love it. Have you? It's is it on your playlist? Please put it on.
It's not on my playlist. I feel like it's not on my playlist yet, but I do know the song, and it's that same. I feel like any really good sloppy party music where you're like, this is about getting blackout drunk and making horrible decisions, is also great to work out to, because you're like, it's like the same kind of like adrenaline, but you remember it all
so much. One of my current things is I want to start teaching classes. I want to start teaching fitness classes. I was a teacher in classrooms for more than a decade. I've been a comedian for more than a decade. So it's like, oh my gosh, I've been going to the gym for 25 years. So it's like, that would be so much fun. And the thoughts of like what songs and playlists to include in like a 45 to 50 minute set with people there to exercise. It's like, oh, that's gonna be fun. Like that's gonna be a blast.
You're throwing a little party.
If you have it totally is. If you have any songs that you're like, oh, this song hits, feel free. Like I love sharing playlists and songs like that. So
good. Same. We will begin
great.
a text thread that we share songs on, because I love that also. It's like, because it's so fun. It makes it all feel so like silly and fun versus like a chore again.
The research has shown that people who listen to music are able to work out so much more than people who don't. Like it just increases your ability and your capacity to stay doing whatever it is you're doing. So, well, margarita make you keep doing workouts. Getting towards the hour mark, one of the questions I like to kind of end on is if you could give any advice to your early comedy or human self, what would you tell yourself? Like, what do you wish you could instill in young Laura's mind?
I feel like beyond the keep being funny and keep being nice, I feel like that's a great mantra. That I wish I could have like let myself know earlier that like the illusion of the cool kids is just an illusion. Like I feel like when there was a lot of like, who are the gatekeepers? Who are the people? And that's both with comedy and fitness, that there's such like an intimidation, or there's such a like, comparing yourself to who you consider to be the ideal person of whatever thing you're trying to do, and therefore thinking that you're not legitimate in doing it because you are not to the level that you're trying to like compare yourself to. So I just feel like earlier, like I literally have written on a mirror by my sink, like, you are one of the cool kids, because it's that feeling of like, it's all fake. It's like, there's no like actual standard. This sounds very like woo woo, but like capitalism is trying to sell us that standard. And then there's like some things that I just feel like I spent a lot of my 20s doing a lot of like, I need to lose this much weight by X time, or I need to achieve this comedy goals by X time to like prove my legitimacy in this thing. And that it's like, oh God, just like you spent so much time that you could have spent just like being gentle to yourself and pumping yourself up, trying to change yourself to fit a mold that wasn't actually you. And I think I just wish I would have like known that earlier. It's taken like a lot of, and I still do that stuff. I'm not like, and now I'm completely, perfect and mentally fine. But I feel like, yes, I'm completely, I'm so glad you called me now. I'm completely self-actualized. What good timing.
Great timing.
I know. But I feel like it would be nice when I was younger in that like prove myself mode to be like, oh no, just find joyfulness in the people that, because the people that will end up mattering to you are not the people that you're like, oh, they're like a big, tough, cool person. It's usually like the fellow goofballs. And then they are like the real true treasures in the end anyway. So I feel like that's something that would have been helpful for me to know when I was like obsessing over the opinions of people that I truly like don't remember their faces or names now. But I'm sure at one point it like kept me up at night that they thought that I was very cool.
Yeah. Totally. Comparison is the thief of joy, as they say. So I love that. That's an important thing to keep in mind. Like, we don't need to work as hard to be ourselves, and yet we do. It's hard. It's hard to not work, but also, there's a fine line between that level of authenticity and putting your nose to the grindstone and accomplishing things that you want to get done. So there's that balance we're looking for, huh?
Yeah, always. Maybe next time we talk, I'll have achieved it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, let me know how your balance is. I can send you some balance exercises too. That's a fun thing that I've been working on. Yeah. So, all right. Laura, don't forget to check out laurasanders.fun online. We can see her on the gram and stuff like that. What are your social handles? You want to share any of those?
Yeah, at gay, Y-A-Y, Laura Sanders.
At gay Laura Sanders.
No,
cool.
Gay, Y-A-Y. Gay,
Oh,
like
yeah.
gray.
I was like,
Bold choice.
it's like,
You're like, okay. You rolled with it so well. You were just like, yeah, okay, yeah. That's fine.
cool. I mean, that was a way to stay fun.
Now I have to look up.
Follow. There's probably a gay Laura Sanders out
That's
there,
right.
and if you're listening, gay Laura, we appreciate you.
And I will follow you on Instagram soon.
Absolutely. Well, if you can't find gay Laura, find yay Laura, because she will bring more joy into your life as she has for me today. And I hope everyone who listens to this. Laura, thank you so much for your time and your presence and just being you.
Oh, this was lovely. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll be in touch, and I'll send you one margarita one of these days.
Sounds good.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tyburczy.